x is the variable. So when you're looking for the value of x in the quadratic, it's the formula is in terms of the coefficients, right? Now you don't know what a, b, and c are until you have 0 on one side, and then you're going to be able to tell a, b, and c. So this one here, c is not 7. Let's subtract 7. And so then once you get it, now you know what a, b, and c are, right? Okay. So let's go ahead and work this out and see what we get. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do another one first. I'm going to come back to this one. Okay, I'm going to do a different problem first. So again, here's our formula. Opposite of b plus or minus b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So I kind of like to think of it like this. I like to think of it as b squared, and then I like to have that negative 4 times a times c, but after you do that, then you have to add that value to your b squared. So like that's what subtraction is addition of the opposite. Okay, so that's kind of how I want to think about it when I'm going through and doing it now. Okay. All right, so here's problem number 1. I'll go back to the other one later. So A, B, C. So let's go the opposite of B, 1, plus or minus b squared. Little bit of an issue here with people's arithmetic because anytime you square a negative, it's got to be positive. So I sometimes just square it right away and make it positive without even writing it down. But this is b squared here. Now, whether I write it as plus a minus or whatever, that it doesn't really matter. But just remember that after we take negative 4 times a times c, then make sure that you add that expression to 1. Okay, so it's really kind of like a plus here. All over 2a, and 2 times a would be 4. So 1 plus or minus, I'm going to do the multiplication first. So this would be positive, right? 24. So we got 1 plus 24, so that is 25. So we have 1 plus or minus 25 over 4. Now I'm not done yet, okay? And a couple of the problems that you get today, you're going to have a perfect square here, so then you should work it out, okay? So it's going to be 1 plus or minus 5 over 4. So 1 plus 5 over 4 and 1 minus 5 over 4. So this one would be negative 4 over 4 or negative 1. This is going to be 6 over 4 or 3 halves for your two solutions. So sometimes you can get your solutions that are rational numbers, right? So when that is the case, and I only want you to use the quadratic formula today, you could have actually gone back, you could have factored it. Okay, but I want you to do some problems today where when you work it out, you end up getting rational answers. Okay. So that's our first one. Let's go back to the other one now. We'll try that one. Anybody got any issues here so far? Okay, so let's have you guys do this. Let's have you plug in. Okay, let's have you guys plug in A, B, and C and see if you can get it down to a number plus or minus the square root of a number over a number. See if you can plug that in and work that out. There will be some simplifying to do at the end that I want to walk you through. Anybody get the radicand? Anybody get the number underneath?
88.
88 is right. Okay, because this would be 12 times 7 would be 84. That'd be a positive, but then add that positive 84 to 8, or 84 to 4. So you'd have 88. Okay. So again, 4 plus 84, that's your radicand, so it's going to be 88. Okay, so now we're going to talk about simplifying this now. Okay. So water and oil, they don't mix, right? Okay. So this actually has something that we can simplify. So let's try to simplify that part of it. So perfect square factor that goes into 88 is 4. So I'm going to rewrite that as 4 times 22. Square root of 4 times 22. So right now, negative 2 plus or minus 2 squared is 22 over 6 is where we're at right now. Okay? Now here's the deal. The 2 and the 6, they don't cancel because they're not factors. This 2 is not a factor of the top. The top is not factored. Okay? So what I'm going to have you guys do is I'm going to have you take out a factor of 2 on either side of the plus or minus. So we're going to write this as 2, I'm factoring it, times negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 22. So if you kind of go back to think about it, you know, you're dividing the 2 out of here, you get negative 1 left, this is negative 2, and this is 2 squared root of 22. Everybody okay with what I'm doing here? Like think of it as negative 2 plus 2y. How would you factor that? You would undistribute a negative 2 or a positive 2. It wouldn't matter. I don't care what you do. I'm going to undistribute a 2. So then you have negative 1 plus y. Now what if it was like that, plus or minus? Well, you're still factoring out that number from either side of the plus or minus. We just write it plus or minus because it's the same property as if it's just a plus. Okay. So now, is this thing a factor of the top? Yes, because we factored it. We undistributed it. So now you can cancel a factor of 2 out of the top and the bottom. So your solution would be negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 22 over 3. Just remember, you cannot simplify fractions unless the top has a factor and the bottom has a factor in common. Okay? Are we okay with what we're doing here? Okay, let's do one more and we'll call it a day. Okay, so see if you guys can plug this into the quadratic formula. So see again if you can get it into this form, just for practice. And then there's one other little thing at the end that's a little bit different that we'll talk about. A is 1. So the coefficient there is 1. B is 2. C is 30. This was 4 plus a negative 12. This is negative 12. So your radicand is a negative now. So again, just a reminder, what's this always going to be right here? This is always going to be a positive, right? So I just square it in my head right away. If you want to write it down, you can, but just make sure it's positive. Do these cancel?
No.
No, they're not factors. Do these cancel? No, because they're not. They're not, like things. So then let's simplify the square root of negative 8. So that's something we've been doing here the last couple days. Okay. So I'm going to say that that's going to be negative 1 times 4 times 2. So those are going to be my numbers that make up that product of 8. So now we have negative 2 plus or minus 2i square roots of 2 over 2. Now, we could do one thing about complex answers is we always have to have it written as the real part plus or minus the imaginary part. So really, there's one thing that you could do right now is you could divide the real part by the denominator, and that'd give you negative 1. And then you could divide this by 2, and now is when we divide that into that, the 2 and the 2, those are factors, just that part. So you could say that that would be I squared to 2 over 2. So this is your real part, this is your imaginary part of the problem.
Wouldn't that 2 on the
Oh, you're right. Sorry about that. You wouldn't even be there, would it? Okay, you're right. So let's do this. Let's go back and let's do it just like we would the other one. Let's factor out a 2. So if I factor a 2 out, I get negative 1 plus or minus I squared to 2 over 2. And then those factors of 2 cancel just like we did before. And you get the same thing. So again, when you have imaginaries, make sure that you divide the real part by the bottom and the imaginary part by the bottom, or you could have factored the 2 out and you, in this case, get the same thing. Okay. So our solutions would be negative 1 plus I squared to 2 and negative 1 minus I squared to 2. Okay. So that's all I have for you. Give you plenty of time to work here.